You do not always miss the person. Sometimes you miss the hope that one day they would finally love you the way you needed. You remember the rare good moments, but forget the nights you felt ignored, unwanted, and completely alone beside them. And when loneliness becomes heavy, your mind starts turning pain into nostalgia. But Buddhism teaches a difficult truth. Attachment can make us return to the very place that destroyed our peace. In this video, you will learn how to stop romanticizing people who made you feel empty, how to face loneliness without running back to old wounds, and how to become so deeply at peace with yourself that you never again mistake someone's presence for genuine love. 1. Accept that their presence did not remove your loneliness. The mind often confuses presence with connection. It says, "At least I had someone." But having someone in your life is not the same as feeling loved by them. Having their name in your phone is not the same as having emotional safety. Seeing them, talking to them, or calling them your partner does not automatically mean you were truly connected. A person can sit beside you and still make you feel invisible. They can speak to you every day and still never ask what is happening inside your heart. They can say they care about you and still leave you alone whenever you need support. They can give you just enough attention to keep you hopeful, while never giving you enough consistency to make you feel secure. This is one of the most painful forms of loneliness. It is easier to understand loneliness when nobody is there, but it is much more confusing when someone is physically present and you still feel emotionally abandoned. You start questioning yourself. You wonder, why do I still feel empty when I have someone? You may even feel guilty for being unhappy. You may tell yourself that you are expecting too much. You may try to become more patient, less emotional, less demanding, and easier to love. But your loneliness may not have come from asking for too much. It may have come from repeatedly receiving too little. Ask yourself honestly, what did their presence actually give you? Did you feel calm when you were with them? Did you feel free to express your feelings without being mocked, ignored, or punished? Did you trust that they would still care about you when you were not entertaining, cheerful, useful, or easy to deal with? Did their actions make you feel chosen, or did you constantly feel as though you had to compete for their attention? Did you feel emotionally safe, or were you always preparing yourself for the next change in their behavior? These questions matter because the mind becomes dishonest after someone leaves. It begins to remember their presence, but forgets the quality of that presence. You remember the nights you spoke for hours, but forget the days when they disappeared without explanation. You remember the moments they made you laugh, but forget how often they made you cry. You remember the affectionate words, but forget how rarely their behavior matched those words. You remember how painful it felt when they left, but forget how lonely you felt when they stayed. This is why you must look at the entire relationship, not only the moments your attachment wants you to remember. Perhaps you waited hours for their replies and then pretended it did not bother you. You told yourself they were busy, tired, confused, or going through something difficult. You kept giving explanations for behavior that was slowly damaging your peace. When they finally replied, you felt immediate relief. For a moment, the anxiety disappeared. But that relief was not the same as love. It was simply the end of the fear their silence had created. Perhaps you felt afraid to express your needs because you did not want to seem demanding. You carefully chose your words. You tried to sound calm even when you were deeply hurt. You reduced your needs to the smallest possible request and still worried that asking for basic communication might push them away. You may have said, "It is fine," when it was not fine. You may have said, "I understand," when you felt completely neglected. You may have accepted apologies without changed behavior because you were afraid that holding them accountable would cause them to leave. Little by little, you abandoned yourself to protect the connection. And still, the connection did not feel safe. Perhaps you accepted disrespect because loneliness made you believe that something was better than nothing. You tolerated coldness, mixed signals, broken promises, excuses, and emotional distance, because the idea of losing them felt worse than the pain of keeping them. But something is not always better than nothing. Sometimes the wrong person creates more emptiness than solitude ever could. Being alone may feel quiet, but being with someone who makes you question your value can feel like a daily rejection. That is not the end of loneliness. That is loneliness wearing the costume of a relationship. Buddhism encourages right understanding, which means learning to see life as it truly is, rather than as we desperately want it to be. Right understanding asks you to remove the story and observe the reality. The story may be, we had something special. The reality may be that you spent most of the relationship anxious, confused, and emotionally hungry. The story may be, they loved me in their own way. The reality may be that their way of loving you repeatedly harmed your peace. The story may be, nobody understood them like I did. The reality may be that understanding someone does not require you to keep accepting what hurts you. You can understand why a person behaves badly and still decide that their behavior is unacceptable. Their past may explain them, but it does not obligate you to suffer with them. Your healing begins when you stop saying, I lost the person who made me happy, and admit, I lost the person I kept hoping would one day make me happy. There is a major difference between these two statements. The first statement turns them into the source of your happiness. The second reveals that most of your happiness was based on hope. You were hoping they would become more consistent. You were hoping they would finally understand your needs. You were hoping your patience would inspire them to change. You were hoping the relationship would become what you imagined it could be. But hope can keep a person trapped when it is disconnected from evidence. You were not only attached to who they were, you were attached to who you believed they might become. That truth may hurt, but it is a clean pain. Clean pain is the pain of accepting reality. It may make you cry, but it helps you move forward. Unclean pain is the suffering created by denial, fantasy, repeated disappointment, and the refusal to let go. It keeps the wound open because you continue expecting a different result from the same pattern. Do not judge yourself for staying. You stayed because you cared. You stayed because you saw potential. You stayed because you wanted love, safety, and connection. You may also have stayed because you were afraid of being alone, afraid of starting again, or afraid that nobody else would choose you. These fears do not make you weak, they make you human. But now that you can see the pattern, you have a responsibility not to return to it blindly. Awareness creates responsibility. Once you understand what repeatedly harmed you, you cannot keep calling it an accident. Once you recognize emotional neglect, you cannot keep describing it as patience. Once you see that the relationship made you feel alone, you must stop treating their absence as the only reason you are lonely. The goal is not to convince yourself that they were completely terrible. People are rarely entirely good or entirely bad. They may have had beautiful qualities. They may have cared in certain moments. They may have been struggling with wounds you could not heal. But a person does not need to be evil for a relationship to be unhealthy. You do not need to hate them in order to leave them behind. You do not need to erase every good memory in order to accept that the relationship was not good for your peace. The goal is simply to remember the truth. The relationship was not peaceful enough to deserve the power it still holds over you. Their presence did not remove your loneliness. In many moments, it intensified it, and once you fully accept that, you stop confusing their return with your healing. You begin to understand that peace may not come from getting them back. Peace may come from finally no longer needing them to become the person they repeatedly failed to be. 2. Stop worshipping rare moments of affection. One of the strongest forms of emotional attachment is created by inconsistency. A person ignores you, then suddenly becomes warm. They pull away, then return with affection. They make you feel unwanted, then give you one beautiful moment that makes you question everything you were ready to accept. Because their affection is unpredictable, it begins to feel more powerful than it really is. You stop experiencing basic kindness as something normal. You experience it as a reward. One caring message feels extraordinary because it came after days of silence. One loving conversation feels unforgettable because you had spent so long feeling emotionally shut out. One small act of attention becomes enough to make you believe that the whole relationship is finally changing. This is how inconsistency keeps people attached. The mind begins to focus on rare moments of relief instead of the overall pattern of pain. You may tell yourself, "See, they do care." You may hold now do the same with lesson 2, same length on, to one good night, one apology, one promise, or one emotional conversation as proof that the relationship is worth saving. But one good moment cannot erase a repeated pattern. A beautiful evening cannot repair months of confusion. A loving message cannot make disrespect disappear. A promise to change means very little when the behavior remains the same. The problem is not that those good moments were fake. Some of them may have been sincere. The problem is that you gave them more importance than they deserved. You allowed rare affection to become evidence of a stable love that was never actually present. Imagine someone gives you a glass of water after leaving you thirsty for days. In that moment, the water may feel like the greatest gift in the world, but the intensity of your gratitude does not prove that they cared for you well. It may only prove how deeply deprived you had become. This is what happens emotionally. When someone gives you very little, every small amount feels enormous. A person who is consistently caring does not make you feel shocked every time they show kindness. You do not feel grateful simply because they replied. You do not feel relieved because they finally treated you with respect. Healthy love does not make basic attention feel rare. Healthy love does not keep you emotionally starving and then expect praise for giving you crumbs. Ask yourself honestly, how much of what you called love was actually relief? When they finally replied, did you feel loved or did you simply feel less anxious? When they returned after disappearing, did you feel secure or were you just grateful that they had not abandoned you completely? When they apologized, did you feel truly understood or did you feel hopeful because you were desperate for the conflict to end? Relief can feel very similar to love when you have been living in emotional uncertainty, but they are not the same. Love creates safety. Relief only temporarily removes fear. This is why you may miss someone who repeatedly hurt you. You are not only missing the person, you are missing the emotional high that came whenever they briefly stopped disappointing you. The cycle became familiar. First came distance, then came anxiety, then came overthinking, then came the sudden return of affection, and when they became warm again, you felt an intense sense of happiness. That happiness was not necessarily proof of a deep connection. It was often your nervous system relaxing after a period of emotional stress. Buddhist teaching warns us about craving because craving distorts the way we see things. When we strongly crave something, we stop seeing it clearly. We focus on the pleasure it gives us and ignore the suffering attached to it. We remember the emotional high, but forget the emotional price. This is why attachment can make a harmful relationship appear beautiful in memory. You remember the rare moments when they were loving. You forget how much pain came before those moments. You remember the apology. You forget that the same behavior returned. You remember the promise. You forget how many promises had already been broken. You remember the day they made you feel special. You forget the many days they made you feel invisible. The mind often selects the best memories and uses them to argue against the truth. It says, "But we had good times." Of course you had good times. Almost every painful relationship contains some good moments. That is often why people stay. If the connection were painful every second, leaving would be simple. The difficulty comes from the mixture. There is enough affection to keep hope alive, but not enough consistency to create peace. There is enough closeness to prevent you from fully letting go, but enough distance to keep you insecure. There are enough promises to make you wait, but not enough action to build trust. This emotional mixture can become addictive. You begin chasing the next moment of warmth. You tolerate days of confusion because you believe another beautiful moment is coming. You keep waiting for the person they occasionally become. But occasional behavior does not define a relationship. Patterns do. A person may be loving when they fear losing you. They may be attentive when they feel lonely. They may become kind after hurting you. They may say everything you want to hear when they sense you are finally ready to walk away. But ask yourself, who are they most of the time? Not when they are trying to win you back. Not when they feel guilty. Not when they are afraid you will leave. Who are they in the ordinary days? Are they consistent? Are they respectful? Do they communicate clearly? Do they care about your emotional safety even when there is no crisis? Do their actions match their words when they have nothing to gain? This is where the truth lives. Do not judge a relationship only by its most intense moments. Judge it by its normal pattern. Buddhism teaches that clarity requires us to observe the whole experience rather than becoming trapped by one pleasant feeling. Pleasure is temporary. Pain is temporary. Promises are temporary. But repeated behavior reveals the direction of a person's character. You must learn to stop worshipping rare moments of affection as though they were proof of permanent love. One kind conversation does not mean the relationship is healed. One emotional apology does not mean the pattern is broken. 1 week of good behavior does not erase years of instability. Real change is not dramatic, it is consistent. Real love does not appear only after you threaten to leave. It is present in the way someone treats you when they believe you will stay. You may have built your entire hope around the best version of them. You saw how caring they could be, and you believed that version was their true self. Whenever they became distant again, you told yourself they were stressed, afraid, confused, or emotionally wounded. You kept waiting for the loving version to return permanently. But a person is not only their best moments. They are also their repeated choices. Potential is not consistency. Capability is not commitment. Someone being capable of loving you well does not mean they are willing to do it. This is painful to accept because it destroys the fantasy that one more conversation, one more chance, or one more sacrifice will finally change everything. But accepting the truth is better than spending years worshipping temporary affection. Look at the entire relationship. Do not isolate the sweetest memories from the suffering that surrounded them. Ask yourself what you had to endure in order to receive those rare moments of love. How much silence did you tolerate? How much confusion did you accept? How often did you doubt yourself? How many times did you reduce your needs? How many nights did you cry before receiving one message that made you stay? The good moments may have been real, but they were not enough. A person can make you laugh and still damage your peace. They can make you feel deeply desired in one moment and completely unwanted in the next. They can create beautiful memories and still be incapable of building a healthy future. They can care about you and still lack the maturity to love you properly. You do not have to deny the good in order to accept the bad. You only need to stop allowing the good to hide the bad. Peace is not built from rare moments of affection. Peace is built from consistency, honesty, emotional safety, respect, and trust. The right connection will not make you feel as though love is a prize you must earn again every day. You will not have to survive emotional hunger just to appreciate a small amount of care. You will not need to study every message, every silence, and every change in behavior. You will not constantly wonder whether affection will disappear tomorrow. When you stop worshipping rare moments, your standards become clearer. You stop asking, "Did they ever love me?" You begin asking, "Was their love consistent enough to create a healthy life?" That is the more important question, because love that appears only occasionally may feel powerful, but it cannot create peace. And the moment you choose peace over emotional intensity, the rare moments lose their control over you. 3. Understand that missing them is not a command to return. A feeling can be real without being a reliable instruction. You may miss someone deeply and still know that returning to them would be a mistake. You may remember their voice, their smile, the conversations you shared, and the moments when you felt close to them. You may suddenly feel their absence late at night, while listening to a familiar song, visiting an old place, or seeing something that reminds you of the life you once imagined together. That feeling is real. But it does not mean you should go back. This is one of the most important truths you must understand during healing. Missing someone is an emotion, not a command. The mind often treats emotional pain as an emergency. The moment loneliness appears, it immediately looks for the fastest way to make the discomfort stop. It tells you to send a message, check their social media, look through old photographs, or find some excuse to contact them. It whispers, just talk to them once. It says, maybe enough time has passed. It suggests, perhaps they have changed. But the mind is not always seeking what is best for you. Sometimes it is only seeking what is familiar. Contacting them may give you temporary relief. Seeing their name appear on your phone may calm your anxiety for a few minutes. Hearing their voice may make the loneliness disappear for one evening. But what happens after that? Does the peace remain, or does the old confusion return? Do you feel stronger the next morning, or do you find yourself waiting for another reply, reading hidden meanings into every word, and wondering whether you have reopened the same painful cycle? Temporary relief is not the same as healing. You must learn to survive the feeling without repeating the pattern. Buddhism teaches mindfulness, which means observing what is happening within you without immediately reacting to it. When the feeling of missing them appears, pause. Do not fight it. Do not judge yourself. Do not say, I should be over this by now. Do not assume that feeling sad means you have made no progress. Simply notice what is happening. You can quietly say to yourself, missing is present. This small change in language is powerful. Instead of saying, I cannot live without them, you recognize that a feeling is moving through you. Instead of saying, I need them back, you acknowledge that loneliness has appeared. Instead of turning the emotion into your identity, you observe it as a temporary experience. You are not the loneliness. You are the person noticing the loneliness. You are not the memory. You are the awareness in which the memory has appeared. The feeling may be intense, but intensity does not make it permanent. Every emotion rises, remains for a while, and eventually passes. Think of it like a wave. When a wave rises in the ocean, it can appear powerful. It may crash with great force, but it cannot remain at its highest point forever. Your emotions behave in the same way. Loneliness rises. Longing rises. Grief rises. Then, if you do not keep feeding them with stories, they slowly lose their force. The problem is that most people do not simply feel the emotion, they add thoughts to it. The original feeling may be, I miss them. Then the mind begins building a story. It says, they were the only person who truly understood me. It says, I will never find a connection like that again. It says, maybe I left too soon. It says, perhaps this time they will finally treat me differently. It says, being with them was better than being alone. Now the pain becomes much larger. The feeling itself may have passed in a few minutes, but the story keeps it alive for hours. This is why mindfulness matters. It helps you separate what you are feeling from what you are imagining. You may miss them, but that does not prove they were good for you. You may feel lonely, but that does not prove you should return. You may remember the happy moments, but that does not erase the reasons the relationship ended. Your emotions remember comfort. Your wisdom must remember the entire pattern. There may be moments when you feel a powerful urge to contact them. Before you act, ask yourself a few honest questions. What am I hoping will happen if I reach out? Am I looking for genuine resolution, or am I simply trying to escape loneliness? Has anything truly changed, or am I responding to a temporary emotion? Did this person create peace in my life, or am I remembering only the rare moments when the pain stopped? How did I usually feel after speaking to them? Did I feel secure and respected, or did I feel more confused, dependent, and emotionally unsettled? These questions interrupt impulsive behavior. They create space between the feeling and the action. That space is where freedom begins. Without that space, every emotion controls you. Loneliness tells you to call, so you call. Anxiety tells you to check, so you check. Hope tells you to wait, so you wait. Fear tells you that nobody else will love you, so you accept treatment that destroys your self-respect. But when you learn to pause, you stop being controlled by every passing emotion. You begin making decisions from clarity instead of discomfort. This does not mean suppressing your feelings. Suppression says, I am not allowed to miss them. Mindfulness says, I miss them, but I do not have to return. Suppression tries to bury the pain. Mindfulness allows the pain to exist without giving it control. You can cry and still keep the door closed. You can feel lonely and still protect your peace. You can remember the good times and still accept that the relationship was unhealthy. You can love someone and still know that loving them from a distance is safer than allowing them back into your life. These truths can exist together. Healing is not always about removing love from your heart. Sometimes it is about removing access from someone who repeatedly misused it. Your strength is not measured by whether you never think about them again. That is an unrealistic expectation. Memories do not disappear simply because a relationship has ended. You may remember them unexpectedly months or even years later. A song may bring back a moment. A familiar smell may remind you of a place. A date may return you to an old memory. This does not mean you have failed. It only means your mind remembers experiences that once mattered to you. Progress is not the absence of memory. Progress is the absence of automatic obedience. At one time, missing them may have caused you to contact them immediately. Later, you may still miss them, but choose to remain silent. At one time, their social media may have controlled your mood. Later, you may feel curious, but decide not to check. At one time, one lonely evening may have been enough to send you back. Later, you may sit through that evening, take care of yourself, and wake up grateful that you did not reopen the wound. That is healing. It may not feel dramatic, but it is real. Every time you experience an urge without acting on it, you weaken the old pattern. Every time you allow loneliness to pass without returning to someone who hurt you, you teach your mind that discomfort can be survived. Every time you choose long-term peace over short-term relief, you become emotionally stronger. You may also need to accept that the person you miss no longer exists in the way you remember them. The version in your mind is made from selected memories. It is the version who said the right things, held you during difficult moments, made you laugh, or promised a future with you. But memory rarely presents the whole person. It removes the long silences, the broken promises, the emotional distance, and the moments you felt unwanted. You are often tempted to return not to the real person, but to the carefully edited version created by longing. That is why you must return to facts. Remember how the relationship consistently made you feel. Remember what you repeatedly asked for and did not receive. Remember how many times you explained the same pain. Remember the promises that were made and broken. Remember the version of yourself who was exhausted from trying to keep the connection alive. Do not use these memories to create hatred. Use them to protect clarity. You are not trying to prove that the person had no good qualities. You are reminding yourself why your peace required distance. Buddhism teaches that attachment creates suffering when we demand that something temporary remain exactly as we want it. The relationship changed. The person changed. You changed. The future you imagined did not happen. Resisting these truths keeps you trapped. Accepting them allows grief to move through you. The goal is not to become emotionally cold. The goal is to stop allowing emotion to make decisions that your wisdom will later regret. When missing them appears, breathe. Let the feeling sit beside you without giving it the keys to your life. You can say, I understand why I miss them. They were part of my routine, my hopes, and my emotional world. But I also understand why I cannot return. That is maturity. That is self-respect. That is the beginning of freedom. You do not need to contact someone every time your heart remembers them. You do not need to reopen a door every time loneliness enters the room. You do not need to return to suffering simply because healing feels quiet today. The wave will pass, the urge will weaken, the night will end, and tomorrow you will be grateful that a temporary feeling did not make a permanent decision for you. Your strength is not proven by never missing them. Your strength is proven by missing them without abandoning yourself. 4. Stop using the past as shelter from the present. Sometimes you do not want to return because the past was truly peaceful. You want to return because the present feels empty. The relationship may have caused anxiety, confusion, disappointment, and emotional exhaustion. Yet when you are alone, your mind begins presenting the past as a place of comfort. It forgets how much you suffered there. It remembers only that the place was familiar. This is one of the most dangerous tricks of attachment. Familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar freedom. You already understand the old relationship. You know the cycle. You know how long they usually disappear before returning. You know what kind of apology they give after hurting you. You know how to reduce your needs, hide your disappointment, and behave carefully enough to avoid another argument. None of this is healthy, but it is predictable. The future, however, is unknown. You do not know when you will feel completely healed. You do not know who you will become without them. You do not know whether someone healthier will enter your life. You do not know how many quiet evenings you will have to face before solitude begins to feel peaceful. Because the future offers no immediate guarantees, the mind becomes tempted by what it already knows. It says, perhaps the old pain was not so bad. It says, at least I knew what to expect. It says, maybe being unhappy with someone is better than being alone. But being familiar with suffering does not make suffering safe. A prison does not become a home simply because you have memorized its walls. You must understand that the desire to go back is not always evidence that the relationship was right. Sometimes it is evidence that you have not yet learned how to live inside the empty space it left behind. When someone has occupied your emotional world for a long time, their absence changes more than your relationship status. It changes your routine. Perhaps you used to check your phone every morning for their message. Perhaps you spoke to them at the same time each evening. Perhaps you planned your weekends around them. Perhaps every small event in your day became something you wanted to tell them. After they leave, those habits remain for a while. Your hand still reaches for the phone. Your mind still prepares stories to share. Your body still expects their presence at certain hours. This does not mean they were meant for you. It means your mind became accustomed to a routine. Habits often survive longer than relationships. You may think, I miss them, when part of what you actually miss is having someone to contact. You may think, I need them, when what you really need is a new structure for your day. You may think, my life was better before, when the truth is simply that your present life has not yet been rebuilt. Do not confuse an unfinished present with proof that the past was better. Healing creates an uncomfortable space between the life you left and the life you have not yet built. That space can feel empty, but emptiness is not always something to fear. Sometimes emptiness is evidence that something harmful is no longer occupying your life. Think of a room filled with broken furniture. When everything is removed, the room may initially appear cold and empty. You may feel tempted to bring the old furniture back simply because the space looks unfamiliar. But the empty room is not a failure. It is an opportunity. You can clean it. You can repair it. You can choose carefully what deserves to enter next. Your emotional life works in the same way. The silence after a painful relationship may feel uncomfortable, but that silence gives you space to hear yourself again. For a long time, your attention may have been centered on them. Were they happy? Were they becoming distant? Would they reply? Were they upset with you? Did they still care? Would they leave? Your mind may have spent so much energy watching their behavior that you stopped noticing your own life. Now the noise is gone. At first, the quiet may feel like loneliness. Later, it can become clarity. You begin to notice how tired you were. You begin to recognize how much of yourself you neglected. You remember interests you abandoned, friendships you ignored, plans you postponed, and parts of your personality that became smaller while you tried to keep the relationship alive. Do not rush back to the past before the present has had time to reveal what it can become. Buddhism teaches us to live in the present moment because the past no longer exists anywhere except in memory. The person you miss is not standing in front of you as they were in your best moments. The relationship you remember is not currently happening. What exists now is a collection of images, emotions, conversations, and stories stored in your mind. Memory can feel alive, but it is not the same as reality. The mind often takes an old moment and repeatedly uses it to escape the discomfort of the present. You may replay a loving conversation when you feel alone. You may look at old photographs when your current evening feels empty. You may reread messages because they allow you to temporarily enter a time when you still believed the relationship had a future. For a few minutes, this may feel comforting, but afterward, the loneliness often becomes heavier. Why? Because you have compared the present not with the full reality of the relationship, but with one carefully selected memory. The present can never compete fairly with a past that has been edited. The past no longer contains arguments, waiting, uncertainty, or disappointment, because memory can remove those parts whenever it wants comfort. You must stop using selected memories as evidence that you should return. When you remember a beautiful moment, allow yourself to acknowledge it. It happened. It mattered. But it was only one part of the story. A healthy understanding of the past includes both the pleasure and the pain. It remembers the laughter without forgetting the anxiety. It remembers the closeness without forgetting the distance. It remembers the promises without forgetting what actually followed them. You do not have to destroy every beautiful memory in order to move forward. You only have to stop using those memories as shelter from the life you need to build now. Many people return to unhealthy relationships during moments of boredom, loneliness, or uncertainty. They do not return because the other person has changed. They return because nothing exciting has replaced the relationship yet. This is a serious mistake. Your healing should not depend on immediately finding someone new. If you leave one person only because another person is waiting, you may never learn how to stand emotionally on your own. Then every period of loneliness will feel like a crisis. Every ending will make you desperate for a replacement. Every empty space will seem like proof that you are incomplete. The purpose of solitude is not to punish you. It is to show you that your life can remain meaningful even when nobody is constantly validating your existence. You need to learn that a quiet phone does not mean you are forgotten. An empty evening does not mean you are unwanted. A weekend alone does not mean everyone else has a better life. Loneliness is a feeling. It is not an accurate measurement of your worth. Do not allow one uncomfortable night to convince you to return to months or years of suffering. The night will pass, the urge will weaken, the present will become easier when you stop constantly escaping it. At first, you may need to make deliberate changes. Remove easy access to the past. Stop rereading old conversations. Stop visiting their social media whenever you feel empty. Stop keeping photographs in places where they repeatedly pull you backward. Stop asking mutual friends for updates that do nothing except reopen your emotional attachment. These actions are not cruel, they are boundaries. You cannot heal while constantly feeding the part of your mind that refuses to accept the ending. Imagine trying to allow a wound to close while touching it every hour to see whether it still hurts. Of course, it will continue hurting. You are repeatedly disturbing the healing process. Distance is not always an act of anger. Sometimes it is an act of wisdom. Buddhism teaches non-attachment, but non-attachment does not mean pretending you never cared. It means allowing the past to remain in the past without demanding that it return and complete you. You can appreciate what was good. You can learn from what was painful. You can forgive what you are ready to forgive. But you must stop treating yesterday as the only place where happiness is possible. Your life is happening now. This moment may not be exciting. It may not contain romance, attention, or constant companionship, but it contains something the old relationship may not have given you, the freedom to rebuild yourself honestly. Use that freedom. Create routines that belong to you. Wake up without immediately checking whether someone has remembered you. Spend time in silence without treating silence as rejection. Walk outside and observe what is around you, instead of replaying old conversations. Read something that challenges your mind. Strengthen your body. Keep your surroundings clean. Prepare food with care. Speak to people who make you feel respected rather than emotionally confused. Return to the goals you postponed while your energy was consumed by the relationship. These actions may seem small, but a peaceful life is built through small actions repeated consistently. You do not suddenly become happy alone one morning. You become happy alone by proving to yourself, day after day, that your own company is not dangerous. You learn that you can comfort yourself without contacting the person who caused the wound. You learn that boredom can be survived without reopening old doors. You learn that peace may initially feel less exciting than emotional chaos. This last truth is important. After a relationship filled with intense highs and lows, peace can feel strangely empty. Your mind may have become accustomed to constant stimulation. One day, you were afraid they would leave. The next day, they made you feel deeply loved. Then they became distant again. Your emotions were constantly moving. When that cycle ends, calmness may feel unfamiliar. You may mistakenly interpret the absence of drama as the absence of feeling. But peace is not emptiness. Peace is what exists when your nervous system no longer has to prepare for emotional danger. Do not return to chaos simply because calmness does not yet feel exciting. Give yourself time to adjust. You are learning a new emotional language. The past spoke through anxiety, anticipation, fear, and relief. The present may speak more quietly. It may offer stability, self-respect, patience, and space. At first, you may not recognize these as valuable because they do not create the same emotional intensity. But intensity is not always love. Sometimes, intensity is simply instability. Ask yourself honestly what you are trying to escape when you want to go back. Are you escaping boredom? Are you escaping the fear that nobody else will come? Are you escaping the responsibility of rebuilding your own life? Are you escaping the pain of accepting that the future you imagined with them will not happen? The answer may be uncomfortable, but it will help you. Perhaps you are not truly longing for the relationship. Perhaps you are longing for an escape from the work of healing. Healing requires you to face yourself without distraction. It reveals where you ignored your own needs. It exposes how much of your worth became dependent on another person's attention. It asks you to create meaning instead of waiting for someone else to bring meaning into your life. This work is difficult, but returning to the past does not remove the work. It only delays it. You may return and feel relief for a short time, but eventually the same wound will reopen. The same unmet needs will return. The same reasons you left will still be waiting. Then you will have to begin healing again, often with less trust in yourself, because you ignored what you already knew. Do not betray your progress because today feels lonely. You have already survived many moments you once believed would break you. You survived the ending. You survived the silence. You survived the first nights without them. You survived the moments when you wanted to reach out but did not. Do not dismiss that strength simply because you still have difficult days. Progress is not a straight line. Some days you will feel free. Other days, one memory will make the past feel close again. This does not mean you are moving backward. It means healing is asking you to practice the same truth again. The truth is that familiarity is not the same as safety. The truth is that loneliness is not a reason to accept emotional neglect. The truth is that the present does not have to feel perfect for the past to remain finished. You are not required to know exactly what comes next. You only need enough wisdom not to return to what repeatedly harmed you. Let the present be incomplete. Let the future remain uncertain. Let yourself build slowly. A life created with patience will serve you better than a relationship chosen out of panic. The empty space in your life will not remain empty forever, but even before new people, opportunities and experiences arrive, that space can become peaceful. It can become the place where you recover your dignity. It can become the place where you learn what you truly need. It can become the place where you stop confusing attention with love and emotional chaos with connection. Do not use the past as shelter, simply because the present is still under construction. You left for a reason. You suffered for reasons that nostalgia may now be trying to erase. Remember those reasons without hatred. Honor them without becoming bitter. Let them protect you from repeating the same cycle. The past may feel familiar, but it cannot offer you a new future while everyone remains the same. Stay here. Stay with the quiet. Stay with the discomfort long enough to discover what exists beneath it. The present is not punishing you. It is clearing space. And sometimes, what feels like emptiness is simply peace arriving before you have learned how to recognize it. 5. Grieve the fantasy, not just the person. The hardest part of letting someone go is not always losing who they truly were. Sometimes, the deepest pain comes from losing who you believed they could become. You did not only become attached to the relationship you had, you became attached to the relationship you kept imagining. You imagined that one day they would finally understand your heart. One day they would communicate clearly. One day they would stop pulling away whenever you became emotionally close. One day they would recognize how much patience, love, and effort you had given them. You kept believing that if you remained loyal enough, understanding enough, or loving enough, something inside them would change. Perhaps they occasionally gave you reasons to believe this. They apologized and promised to do better. They admitted that they had hurt you. They spoke about a future in which everything would be different. They showed you a softer version of themselves for a few days, and you thought, "This is the person I have been waiting for." Then the old behavior returned. The distance returned. The confusion returned. The broken promises returned. Yet instead of accepting the pattern, you continued holding on to the possibility. You told yourself that healing takes time. You told yourself that nobody is perfect. You told yourself that their wounds made it difficult for them to love. These explanations may have contained some truth, but they also allowed you to remain attached to a future that existed only in your mind. Potential is powerful because it allows hope to survive, even when reality is painful. You stop loving the person standing in front of you and begin loving the person you believe is hidden somewhere inside them. You see moments of kindness and treat them as proof of their true nature. You see repeated neglect and describe it as a temporary phase. You give more importance to what they might become than to what they repeatedly choose to be. But a relationship cannot be built with potential. You cannot create emotional safety with someone's future intentions. You cannot build trust from promises that are never turned into action. You cannot spend years living inside the word someday. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that suffering grows when we cling to an image and demand that reality eventually match it. You did not only want this person, you wanted your idea of this person. You wanted the version who communicated consistently, protected your feelings, chose you without hesitation, and finally gave you the love you believed your patience had earned. When the relationship ended, you were not only grieving what had happened, you were grieving everything that would now never happen. You were grieving the conversations you imagined having. You were grieving the peaceful home you pictured building together. You were grieving future birthdays, journeys, celebrations, and ordinary mornings that existed only in your hopes. That future felt emotionally real to you, even though it had never arrived. This is why the ending may feel much larger than the actual relationship. You are not simply losing a person, you are losing an entire imagined life. Allow yourself to acknowledge that loss. Do not dismiss it by saying, "It was all in my head." The emotions were real, even if the future was imagined. You invested hope into it. You made decisions around it. You tolerated painful situations because you believed they were leading somewhere better. It is natural to grieve when that belief collapses, but grief must eventually lead to acceptance. It cannot become another reason to keep waiting. You must ask yourself a difficult question. How long are you willing to sacrifice your present for a future that someone has repeatedly failed to create? Hope is not always healthy. Hope becomes harmful when it keeps you loyal to a pattern that is destroying your peace. You may believe that giving up on the relationship means giving up too soon, but how many chances have already been given? How many conversations have already happened? How many times have you clearly explained what was hurting you? How many promises have been made without lasting change? At some point, patience becomes self-abandonment. At some point, understanding becomes permission. At some point, hope becomes denial. This does not mean people can never change. People can change, but real change requires awareness, effort, responsibility, and consistency. It cannot depend entirely on your patience. It cannot appear only when you are ready to leave. It cannot survive for 1 week and disappear once the crisis has passed. Real change becomes visible through repeated action over time. You do not have to imagine it. You can see it. If you must constantly explain why someone's small improvement proves that everything will eventually become better, you may not be observing change. You may be protecting a fantasy. Look at their behavior without adding your hopes to it. If you met them today exactly as they are, not as they were in the beginning, and not as you imagined they could become, would you choose this relationship again? Would you accept the same communication? Would you accept the same level of effort? Would you accept the same uncertainty, emotional distance, and inconsistency? Or are you only staying emotionally attached because of everything you have already invested? The time you gave them does not require you to give them more. Your past sacrifices do not become valuable by continuing to sacrifice yourself. Sometimes, the wisest decision is to stop investing in something simply because you have already invested so much. This does not make the past meaningless. It means you have finally learned from it. Perhaps you believed your love could heal them. You saw their fear, pain, insecurity, or emotional wounds, and you wanted to show them that safe love existed. But you cannot love someone into becoming ready. You cannot care deeply enough to make another person take responsibility. You cannot heal a wound they refuse to face. Compassion does not require you to remain available for repeated harm. Buddhist compassion includes wisdom. Without wisdom, compassion can become attachment, disguised as kindness. You may say, "I understand why they act this way." That may be true. But understanding the cause of someone's behavior does not remove the consequences of that behavior. You can understand their pain and still protect yourself from it. You can wish them healing without making yourself responsible for delivering it. You can recognize their potential without building your life around whether they ever fulfill it. The person you hoped for may never arrive. That is painful, but accepting it gives your life back to you. It releases you from waiting. It releases you from interpreting every message as a sign of change. It releases you from measuring your worth by whether they finally choose to treat you properly. Grieve the fantasy completely. Grieve the apology you deserved but never received. Grieve the consistency you kept expecting. Grieve the future you planned. Grieve the version of yourself who believed that one more sacrifice would finally make everything work. But after you grieve, return to reality. Reality may feel less beautiful than the fantasy, but reality is where freedom begins. The truth is not that you failed to love them enough. The truth may be that love alone was never enough to create the relationship you needed. A healthy connection requires two people who are willing to be honest, present, responsible, and consistent. One person cannot carry the emotional weight of two. You deserve a relationship you can experience, not one you must constantly imagine. You deserve love that exists in actions, not only in possibilities. You deserve peace in the present, not promises about someday. Release the person they might have become. See the person they repeatedly chose to be, and let that truth, not your fantasy, guide your decision to move forward. 6. Become the safety you kept seeking from them. Many people return to painful relationships because they never learned how to comfort themselves. When loneliness appears, they immediately reach for the person who once made them feel wanted. When sadness becomes heavy, they remember the person who once gave them temporary relief. When fear rises, they contact the same person who often created the fear in the first place. This creates a painful cycle. The person hurts you, you feel emotionally unsafe, then you seek comfort from that same person. For a short time, they make you feel better. Because the pain decreases, you begin believing that you need them. But often, they did not truly create peace. They only paused the suffering they had helped create. This is why emotional dependence can feel so powerful. You become attached, not only to the person, but to the relief you experience whenever they give you attention again. You may think, nobody comforts me the way they do. But ask yourself honestly, who made you need so much comforting? Who created the confusion? Who made you question your worth? Who disappeared and left you wondering what you had done wrong? Who gave you anxiety and then became the person you called when the anxiety became unbearable? You may not be returning because they are your safe place. You may be returning because you have not yet learned how to become safe for yourself. This does not mean you should never need other people. Human beings need love, friendship, support, and connection. Buddhism does not ask you to isolate yourself or become emotionally cold. It teaches freedom from unhealthy attachment, not freedom from all relationships. There is a difference between healthy connection and emotional dependency. Healthy connection says, I value you, but I will not abandon myself to keep you. Dependency says, without your attention, I do not know how to feel okay. Healthy love allows two people to stand beside each other. Dependency makes one person responsible for the emotional stability of the other. When you depend entirely on someone else to regulate your emotions, their behavior begins controlling your life. A delayed reply changes your mood. A cold message ruins your day. A small change in their voice makes you panic. Their attention makes you feel valuable. Their distance makes you feel worthless. You no longer feel as though your emotional life belongs to you. It belongs to their behavior. This is an exhausting way to live. To become your own safe place means slowly taking that power back. It means learning how to respond to your pain without immediately running toward the person who caused it. It means understanding that loneliness does not always require contact. Sometimes loneliness requires care. Sometimes it requires rest. Sometimes it requires movement, honest reflection, or a conversation with someone trustworthy. Sometimes it simply requires you to sit still and allow the emotion to pass. When pain appears, most people attack themselves. They say, "Why am I still missing them? Why am I so weak? Why can I not move on like everyone else? Why do I keep thinking about someone who hurt me?" This inner criticism does not create healing, it creates another wound. You are already grieving, and then you punish yourself for grieving. You are already lonely, and then you tell yourself that your loneliness proves nobody wants you. You are already struggling, and then you treat your struggle as evidence that something is wrong with you. Becoming your own safe place begins with changing the way you speak to yourself. When loneliness appears, do not say, "I have nobody." Say, "I am feeling lonely right now, and I can take care of myself through this moment." When rejection hurts, do not say, "I was not good enough." Say, "This relationship could not give me the security and consistency I needed." When you want to contact them, do not say, "I am pathetic for still caring." Say, "A familiar part of me is searching for comfort. I can offer comfort without reopening the wound." This is not empty positive thinking. It is emotional honesty without cruelty. Buddhist practice teaches compassion, and compassion must include the way you treat yourself. You cannot build peace inside a mind that constantly insults you. You cannot become emotionally secure while speaking to yourself like an enemy. Self-compassion does not mean avoiding responsibility. It means taking responsibility without humiliation. You can admit that you ignored warning signs. You can admit that you returned too many times. You can admit that you accepted treatment that damaged your self-respect, but you do not need to hate yourself in order to learn. Shame keeps you trapped in the past. Understanding helps you change. Imagine a frightened child standing in front of you. Would you tell that child, "You are stupid for being scared"? Would you say, "Nobody loves you, so stop crying"? Would you punish the child for wanting comfort? Most likely, you would sit beside them. You would speak gently. You would remind them that fear does not last forever. You would make sure they were safe. The frightened parts of you need the same response. You may have spent years waiting for someone else to speak to you with patience, reassurance, and kindness. Now you must begin offering those things to yourself. This requires practical action, not only comforting words. Take care of your body, eat properly, even when sadness removes your appetite. Sleep at regular hours instead of staying awake replaying old conversations. Move your body, because emotional pain often becomes trapped as physical tension. Walk, stretch, breathe slowly, or exercise. Your mind is not separate from your body. When the body is exhausted and neglected, emotional pain becomes more difficult to manage. Protect your environment. Clean the room where you spend most of your time. Open the curtains. Remove objects that constantly pull you back into memories. Create a peaceful space that does not feel like a museum of the relationship. Your surroundings influence your nervous system more than you may realize. Protect your attention as carefully as you protect your home. Stop repeatedly checking their social media. Do not search for hidden messages in what they post. Do not ask mutual friends whether they are seeing someone else. Do not reread conversations, searching for proof that they cared. Every time you do this, you hand your peace back to them. You allow a photograph, status, or message to determine whether you will feel calm or devastated. This is not harmless curiosity. It is emotional self-injury when you already know the result will disturb you. Boundaries are one of the strongest forms of self-care. Blocking, muting, deleting, or creating distance may feel extreme when you still care. But access is not a reward someone deserves simply because you once loved them. Access should depend on how their presence affects your well-being. Forgiveness does not require access. Compassion does not require communication. Understanding does not require another chance. You can release anger and still protect yourself. You can wish them well and still refuse to watch their life from a distance. You can care about someone and understand that contact prevents your healing. Becoming your own safe place also means building a life that contains more than this loss. When one relationship becomes the center of your emotional world, its ending makes everything feel empty. You need more than one source of meaning. Return to neglected friendships. Spend time with family members who treat you with respect. Learn something that requires focus. Work toward a goal that has nothing to do with romance. Read, create, pray, meditate, volunteer, or build something useful. These actions do not erase grief, but they remind you that your identity is larger than the person you lost. You were someone before them. You remain someone after them. Your life still contains possibilities that have nothing to do with whether they return. Buddhism teaches that nothing external can provide permanent security because everything changes. People change, feelings change, relationships change, circumstances change. When your peace depends entirely on something outside you remaining the same, fear becomes unavoidable. You constantly worry about losing what you believe you need. Inner safety does not mean nothing will ever hurt you. It means you trust yourself to survive what changes. You trust that rejection will hurt, but will not destroy you. You trust that loneliness will appear, but will not control you. You trust that people may disappoint you, but you will not respond by abandoning your own dignity. This trust is built through experience. Every time you resist contacting someone who repeatedly hurt you, you strengthen it. Every time you sit through an uncomfortable evening without running backward, you prove that you can survive your feelings. Every time you choose rest, reflection, or healthy support instead of emotional chaos, you become safer for yourself. Eventually, something changes. You stop asking, "How can I make them reassure me?" You begin asking, "Why did I give someone so much power over my peace?" You stop asking, "What can I say to make them return?" You begin asking, "What do I need in order to stop leaving myself?" You stop seeing their attention as rescue. You begin seeing your own clarity as protection. This is when emotionally unavailable people begin losing their attraction. Their inconsistency no longer feels mysterious, it feels exhausting. Their silence no longer feels like a challenge you must win. It feels like information. Their occasional affection no longer feels like proof of deep love. It feels insufficient. The more secure you become inside yourself, the less willing you are to remain in relationships that constantly threaten that security. You do not become difficult to love. You become difficult to manipulate. You stop accepting confusion because you are afraid of being alone. You stop begging for communication because silence no longer makes you question your existence. You stop chasing people because your self-worth is no longer running behind them. You begin understanding that the greatest safety is not finding someone who promises never to leave. It is becoming someone who will never again leave yourself. People may still disappoint you. Relationships may still end. Loneliness may still visit. But you will know where to return. You will return to your breath. You will return to your values. You will return to the life you are building. You will return to the quiet strength inside you that no longer needs another person's attention to prove that you matter. That is what it means to become your own safe place. It does not mean you never need love. It means you will no longer destroy yourself trying to receive it. 7. Let solitude teach you what bad company never could. Solitude feels painful when you believe it means you have been rejected. It feels like proof that nobody wants you, nobody understands you, and everyone else has found the connection you are missing. But solitude is not always rejection. Sometimes it is protection. Sometimes it is the quiet space life creates after removing people who were disturbing your peace. At first, this space may feel uncomfortable because you are no longer distracted by messages, conversations, arguments, promises, and emotional uncertainty. There is no one to chase, no behavior to analyze, and no relationship crisis demanding your attention. Now there is silence, and silence can feel frightening when you have spent a long time using another person to escape yourself. You may discover that you do not only miss them, you miss having something to think about. You miss waiting for a reply. You miss the emotional intensity. You miss feeling as though something important might happen at any moment. Even the anxiety gave your mind a sense of activity. Without it, ordinary life may initially seem empty, but do not mistake peace for emptiness. You may simply be unfamiliar with a life that does not require constant emotional survival. A painful relationship can keep your nervous system in a state of alertness. You are always wondering what will happen next. Will they become distant? Will they leave? Did you say something wrong? Why has their tone changed? Are they losing interest? Should you contact them or give them space? This creates constant inner noise. When the relationship ends, the noise does not disappear immediately. Your body may continue expecting danger even when the source of that danger is no longer present. You may still check your phone repeatedly. You may feel anxious during the hours when they normally contacted you. You may imagine messages that never arrive. You may feel restless because no emotional crisis is occurring. This does not mean you need them back. It means your mind and body are adjusting to peace. Give them time. Solitude is not something you understand in one day. It is something you gradually learn to inhabit. At first, being alone may feel like something you must endure. Later, it can become something you value. It begins teaching you what bad company never could. Bad company teaches you to ignore yourself. Solitude teaches you to hear yourself. When you are constantly focused on another person, you stop asking what you truly want. Your decisions begin revolving around their moods, needs, schedule, and approval. You choose what will keep the connection stable. You avoid what might create conflict. You reduce yourself until you become easier for them to manage. Solitude removes that pressure. It gives you the opportunity to ask questions you may have avoided for a long time. What do I actually enjoy? What kind of life feels peaceful to me? What did I stop doing while I was trying to keep this relationship alive? Which parts of myself became smaller? Which values did I compromise because I was afraid of being left? These questions may be difficult, but they help you return to yourself. You may realize that you changed your personality to remain accepted. You became quieter because they disliked difficult conversations. You became less expressive because they called your emotions excessive. You stopped asking for reassurance because they made you feel needy. You gave up plans because they were never interested in supporting them. You tolerated behavior that once would have been unacceptable because you became afraid of losing the relationship. When you are alone, there is no one asking you to become smaller. This can feel unfamiliar. You may not immediately know what to do with the freedom, but freedom does not need to be filled instantly. Let yourself discover slowly. Spend time doing simple things without trying to impress anyone. Walk without constantly checking your phone. Eat a meal without waiting for a message. Sit quietly in a room without treating silence as proof that you are unloved. Read something because it interests you. Listen to music without connecting every song to a memory. Visit a place alone. Make a decision without wondering whether someone else will approve. These small experiences rebuild your relationship with yourself. They show you that life can still contain meaning when nobody is watching. Bad company also teaches you that love must be earned through suffering. Solitude teaches you that peace does not have to be chased. In an unhealthy relationship, you may have believed that if you tried harder, explained yourself better, became more patient, or offered more love, the other person would finally give you what you needed. You treated love like a reward. You believed you had to prove that you deserved consistency. You worked for basic communication. You begged for clarity. You accepted crumbs because you had become emotionally hungry. In solitude, there is nobody withholding peace from you. There is no one deciding whether you deserve a reply. There is no one creating distance and then returning when they need attention. There is no one making you compete for basic respect. At first, this may not feel exciting. Healthy peace rarely creates the same emotional high as inconsistency. Chaos produces adrenaline. Peace produces stillness. If you are accustomed to chaos, stillness may feel boring. This is why some people return to painful relationships even after recognizing the truth. They mistake emotional intensity for love. They think, "At least I felt something." But fear is also a feeling. Jealousy is a feeling. Anxiety is a feeling. Relief after being ignored is a feeling. Intensity alone does not make a relationship meaningful. Sometimes, intensity is simply the result of instability. Solitude gives your emotions time to settle. As they settle, your standards begin to change. You stop being attracted to people who keep you guessing. Mixed signals no longer feel mysterious. They feel immature. Silence no longer makes you want to chase. It gives you information. Inconsistency no longer feels romantic. It feels exhausting. You begin to understand that love should not require constant interpretation. The right people will not force you to decode every message, every pause, and every change in their behavior. Bad company teaches you to accept anxiety as normal. Solitude teaches you how calmness feels. This is important because you cannot recognize healthy love until you understand peace without love. If you have never learned to be comfortable alone, you may accept almost anyone who offers company. You may ignore warning signs because you are afraid of returning to an empty room. You may tolerate disrespect because the relationship appears to protect you from loneliness. But a person who fears solitude will often pay too high a price for connection. They will remain where they are neglected. They will accept emotional confusion. They will overlook dishonesty. They will repeatedly forgive behavior that never changes, not because the relationship is good, but because being alone still feels worse. This is why learning to enjoy your own company is not a small personal achievement. It changes every relationship you will have in the future. When you know that you can survive alone, you stop negotiating against yourself. You no longer need to convince someone to stay. You no longer accept the bare minimum because you are afraid that nothing else will come. You can walk away from disrespect because you know that solitude is less painful than constant emotional harm. You become more selective, not because you believe you are better than other people, but because you finally understand the value of your peace. Buddhism teaches that much of our suffering comes from attachment. Attachment says, "I need this person to remain in my life for me to be complete." Love says, "I care about you, but I will not cling to you at the cost of my peace." Attachment demands permanence in a world where everything changes. People change, feelings change, relationships change, circumstances change. When you build your identity around someone else remaining exactly as you need them to be, fear becomes unavoidable. You constantly worry that they will leave, change, or choose someone else. Solitude teaches you that you can remain whole even when external things change. This does not mean you become cold or stop valuing people. It means you no longer make another person the foundation of your existence. You can love without making love your only source of meaning. You can appreciate someone without surrendering your self-respect. You can experience loss without treating it as the end of your life. This is inner freedom. Many people believe happiness alone means never feeling lonely. That is not true. Even a person who enjoys solitude will sometimes feel lonely. The difference is that they no longer treat loneliness as an emergency. They understand that loneliness is temporary. It can appear on a quiet evening and disappear the next morning. It can arise when you see couples together, remember an old conversation, or experience something you wish you could share. The feeling is real, but it does not mean your life is wrong. You can feel lonely and still be at peace with your decision. You can miss companionship and still refuse unhealthy company. You can desire love without returning to someone who repeatedly made you feel abandoned. This is emotional maturity. Do not make permanent decisions because of temporary loneliness. One empty evening is not a reason to reopen a painful relationship. One difficult weekend is not proof that you made the wrong choice. One memory does not erase the pattern. Sit through the feeling, let it rise, let it speak, then let it pass. Every time you survive loneliness without returning to bad company, you teach yourself something important. You can be trusted. You can trust yourself not to betray your own peace. You can trust yourself to protect the boundaries you created. You can trust yourself to remember the truth, even when your emotions become uncomfortable. This trust is one of the greatest gifts solitude can give you. Perhaps, in the relationship, you stopped trusting your judgment. You recognized the red flags but ignored them. You knew something was wrong but accepted another explanation. You promised yourself that you would leave if the behavior happened again, but when it happened, you stayed. Over time, you began believing that your own decisions meant nothing. Solitude allows you to repair that relationship with yourself. Each boundary you keep becomes evidence that your word matters. Each time you resist checking their page, you strengthen self-control. Each time you choose not to respond to a message designed to pull you back into confusion, you rebuild self-respect. Each time you protect your peace, you prove that you will no longer abandon yourself. Bad company may have taught you that your needs were too much. Solitude teaches you that your needs were simply being offered to the wrong person. Wanting honesty is not too much. Wanting consistency is not too much. Wanting respect, effort, clarity, and emotional safety is not too much. These are not unreasonable demands. They only feel unreasonable when you are asking someone who has no intention of providing them. In solitude, you can stop apologizing for what you need. You can decide what kind of behavior you will accept in the future. You can establish standards before another connection clouds your judgment. You can promise yourself that you will not confuse chemistry with character. You will not confuse attraction with compatibility. You will not confuse occasional affection with consistent love. You will not ignore patterns simply because someone has potential. This is how solitude prepares you for better relationships. It does not remove you from love. It teaches you how to enter love without losing yourself. Eventually, the silence begins to change. It no longer feels like abandonment. It feels like rest. You wake up and realize you did not spend the night wondering where you stood. You go through an entire day without checking whether someone has changed their mind about you. You notice that your body feels lighter, your thoughts become clearer, your energy returns to areas of your life that were neglected. You begin building goals that do not depend on another person. You become interested in your own future again. One day, you may realize that you are no longer waiting for them to come back. This moment may not be dramatic. There may be no final conversation, no sudden breakthrough, and no perfect sense of closure. You may simply notice that their absence no longer controls the room. You remember them, but you do not reach for your phone. You miss a memory, but you do not turn it into a reason to return. You understand what happened without needing them to confirm your understanding. This is freedom. You do not have to hate them. You do not have to erase the past. You do not have to pretend that the relationship meant nothing. You only have to accept that its meaning does not require its continuation. Some people enter your life to stay. Others enter your life to reveal where you still abandon yourself. The lesson is not always how to keep someone. Sometimes, the lesson is how to let them go without losing your heart. Let solitude complete that lesson. Let it show you that your own presence is not a punishment. Let it teach you how to sit with yourself without needing distraction. Let it teach you that peace may be quieter than passion, but far more valuable. Let it teach you that being alone is not the worst thing that can happen. Being with someone who constantly makes you feel alone is worse. Do not return simply because the road ahead is quiet. The quiet is where your mind is learning to rest. It is where your heart is learning that love should not feel like pursuit. It is where your self-respect is becoming stronger than your fear of loneliness. One day, another person may enter your life. But this time, you will not choose them because you need to escape yourself. You will choose them because their presence adds peace to a life that is already peaceful. You will not ask them to complete you. You will observe whether they respect the wholeness you have built, and if they disturb that peace repeatedly, you will know that you can leave. Not because leaving is easy, but because solitude has already taught you that you will survive. That is the real gift of being alone. It does not teach you to need nobody. It teaches you never again to need someone badly enough that you accept losing yourself. You may still miss them. You may still remember the good moments, the conversations, the promises, and the version of the future you once imagined together. But missing someone does not mean they belong in your life. A memory can be meaningful without becoming a reason to return. A person can have good qualities and still be wrong for your peace. A relationship can contain love and still contain more suffering than safety. The truth is that some people made you feel lonelier while standing beside you than solitude ever could. You waited for their replies. You questioned every change in their behavior. You accepted small moments of affection as proof that everything would eventually improve. You kept hoping that patience would transform inconsistency into commitment. But peace cannot be built from waiting, guessing, chasing, and repeatedly abandoning yourself. There comes a point when you must stop asking whether they will finally become the person you needed. You must ask whether you are finally willing to become the person who protects you. Do not return simply because tonight feels quiet. Do not reopen the door because one memory has become painful. Do not confuse loneliness with a sign that you made the wrong decision. Loneliness is temporary. The cycle you escaped was not. One difficult evening can pass. One painful memory can pass. One strong urge to contact them can pass. But returning to the same pattern may cost you months or years of peace. You have already learned what their presence gave you. You have already seen the pattern. You have already experienced what happened when you ignored your own needs to protect the connection. Do not ask life to teach you the same lesson again simply because you are afraid of sitting alone. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that everything changes. People enter, people leave. Feelings rise, feelings fade. Relationships begin and relationships end. Suffering grows when we cling to what has already changed and demand that it return to the form we once wanted. Freedom begins when we stop fighting reality. Acceptance does not mean the relationship never mattered. It means you no longer need it to continue in order for your life to have meaning. You can appreciate what was beautiful without denying what was painful. You can forgive someone without giving them access again. You can wish them peace without sacrificing your own. You can still care and choose distance. You can still remember and move forward. You can still feel love without turning that love into another form of imprisonment. Your goal is not to erase them from your mind. Your goal is to remember yourself again. Remember the person you were before you began measuring your worth by someone else's attention. Remember the dreams you placed aside. Remember the boundaries you lowered. Remember the voice inside you that kept saying, "This is hurting me," even when you tried not to listen. That voice was not trying to destroy the relationship. It was trying to save you. Listen to it now. Let solitude become the place where you return to your own life. Let the silence teach you that peace does not need to be dramatic. Let the empty space remind you that not everything missing should be replaced immediately. Some spaces must remain open long enough for healing to enter. Build a life that feels meaningful, even when your phone is quiet. Build routines that do not depend on being noticed. Build confidence that does not collapse when someone becomes distant. Build a relationship with yourself that is strong enough to prevent loneliness from choosing your company for you. Then, when love appears again, you will not accept it merely because it has arrived. You will observe whether it is consistent. You will notice whether it feels safe. You will ask whether this person adds peace or repeatedly takes it away. You will no longer be impressed by intensity without stability. You will no longer confuse mixed signals with mystery. You will no longer call emotional hunger passion. You will know that healthy love does not require you to disappear in order to keep it. Until that kind of connection arrives, do not treat your own company as a waiting room. Your life is happening now. This is not the empty period before someone else comes to complete you. This is the period in which you discover that you were never incomplete. So breathe. Let the memory arise. Let the sadness exist. Let the urge to return come and go. You do not need to fight every feeling. You only need to stop obeying every feeling. Keep the door closed, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Protect your peace, not because you hate them, but because you have finally learned to value yourself. And whenever loneliness whispers that you should go back, remember this: you were not saved by their presence. You often felt alone, even when they were there. What you miss is not always the relationship. Sometimes you miss the hope that it would eventually become what you needed. Release that hope. Release the fantasy. Release the belief that your happiness is waiting inside someone who repeatedly failed to protect it. Return to your breath. Return to the present. Return to yourself. Because when you become peaceful in your own company, you stop chasing people who make you question your worth. When you become secure within yourself, silence stops feeling like rejection. And when you finally learn that solitude is safer than bad company, loneliness will never again have enough power to send you back to someone who made you feel alone.